Edge of Chaos, starring Neurotoxin and Joe Ryan. Edge of Chaos is a free-flowing discussion, occasionally dealing with mature topics.
Alright everybody, welcome back to the Edge of Chaos. I am, of course, Joe Ryan, here again with Neurotoxin.
Hello.
And no, you're not hearing things, we're back. I know it's been a while. But it took me this long to get back on California time for the weekend. Just for the weekend, I got away. They're still looking for me back there.
They're still looking for you in Texas?
I'm staying here till things cool down, and then I'm going to go back, eventually. Sneak into the dead.
Governor Abbott.
I'm kidding.
Got wanted posters out for you.
I egged Ted Cruz's house. What? I had to. I'm kidding.
You realize you just admitted that out there, right?
Now some asshole egged Ted Cruz's house. They're going to be looking for me next.
Yeah, there you go. Joe Ryan did it. Okay.
Somehow I think that even if I was walked on the news saying accused of doing that, I think I'd just be like, so? What? I'm not ashamed. Even if I didn't do it, it's one of those things you would just take credit for. Why not? What's the problem?
We're not going to talk about Ted Cruz today. That's for a different show, maybe for later. Today, we have a far more interesting Republican that I want to focus on. Indiana Governor Mike Pence. You may remember this asshole, yeah, I said it, from the Pence Amendment in Congress about, 4 years back?
I was going to say, wasn't he the same Pence?
That's the same guy.
But he's governor now.
He resigned from Congress and he ran for governor.
Right.
He's one of these Republicans whose face I'd like to introduce a brick to, but I kind of feel sorry for the brick.
Yeah, ask the brick a bit if he feels good
the
about
brick might not feel comfortable, just like a baker might not want to bake a cake for a gay person's wedding.
Right.
The brick might not feel comfortable going up against Mike Pence's face. So this it sickens me, and I know that a lot of our listeners might be confused by this because they know I'm not in favor of anti-discrimination laws. But the Christian right has no problem with anti-discrimination laws. See, I don't like them, but the Christian right is really fine with them. Mike Pence is totally fine with them, as long as you give Christian conservatives an exemption. What the fuck is that?
And the Christian religion is the only one that it seems like you can't discriminate against.
Well,
that's according to them.
Not necessarily true. So let's talk a little bit about the history of this. So the first Restoration of Religious Freedom Act,
93.
RFA, right?
RFRA, I think is what they say.
Yeah, RFRA. Okay,
RFRA.
RFRA. Yeah, 1993 was a federal law, and I believe it was a federal contractor who was of Native American origin.
In Oregon, yeah.
In Oregon, yes.
Right.
And but he's a federal contractor.
Mm-hmm.
And he lost his job because they gave him a piss test, and they found peyote.
Correct.
And he sued, saying, no, this is a religious ritual that I participated in that's part of my Native American paganism, and you can't discriminate against me, saying that the use of this drug is part of my religion. So the court ruled, and I guess there was a law passed and all that basically, this is, I'm not going to read the actual language of the law, but basically what it's saying is a government cannot enforce laws if they impede on someone's religious freedom.
Right. Right.
So it's not just a Christian religion, but it is religion. So what if I just like to smoke weed?
I wonder if
part of my religion.
Isn't the same for Rastafarian and that whole thing?
Do
they get off the same thing?
There have been actually lawsuits with the Rastafarian religion regarding marijuana in the same sense. I don't know where they've gone.
Yeah,
but
you would think that fall under the same umbrella. But
my question is, why does it have to be religion?
Right.
Why is it okay for the government to impede on personal liberty in general, but not on religious liberty? Where does this make sense to you, Joe? Because to me, it makes none.
I guess it seems like a law that started out as a good idea, but now we're seeing when you twist the logic around a little bit, as Indiana has done, as Arkansas almost did, as a few other states. People forget how many states have already passed laws like Indiana's. Quite a few, like I think it was 33 or something like that, have some version of RFRA on this as state laws. But the interesting thing is, I guess when you start, it almost seems like it's a law that started with an idea, and then when it went through committee, the wording got so non-specific and vague that now it can apply to so many other things. And that's exactly what's going on now. And Indiana made it even more vague.
Right, intentionally. But a lot of it in the modern day, what I guess a lot of the uproar has been from the gay community and LGBT lobbies, is that now a lot of Christian, specifically Christian, but religious people in general, are using this as an excuse to discriminate against homosexuals. For example, photographers, florists, bakers saying we will not work for a homosexual wedding.
Right. And it's funny because cultural change has actually outpaced this law that kind of allowed one behavior, but now, when interpreted a different way, could potentially infringe on this other group. And it's
right.
Just
So now they're basically citing this law saying, nope, baking a cake for this homosexual wedding impedes on my religion, therefore the anti-discrimination laws don't apply, so I'm not going to do it. And that's what's created a lot of the kind of the media attention for this, and what's causing some of these governors and these legislators to go back to the drawing board and say, no, we're going to make a special provision, so now we're going to give you an exemption from these. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and I'm not even taking a side. This is just ridiculous.
It's gotten a little crazy, and it's not to mention now they're legislating in the heat of the moment again during protests and demonstrations, and CEOs going off about this. And did you see the CEO of Salesforce, which is headquartered in Indiana, is now saying that they'll pay full price to move people out of the state if they request it, and several people have, to get away from this law. Like, it's gotten so crazy. And well, see, here's the important difference. This is where Indiana went on a left turn here.
Left turn or right turn? More of a right turn.
I guess right turn, yeah. They went a step further and looked at that Hobby Lobby ruling from the Supreme Court and went, well, guess what? A corporation, it actually spells it out in the law, like a joint partnership, a LLC, like all these things are now people under this law. So that's why there's so much uproar, because it's like any mom and pop business, as you were pointing out the examples of, florists,
bakers,
bakers, whatever. And in one case, this pizzeria that's been besieged upon. We'll get to that later, lefties and righties. It's like, and in this case, it wasn't even a person who was denied service. Fuck you guys for making me agree with Rush Limbaugh. Again, I'll get back to you people, but this lady was just asked a question: would you cater a gay wedding? And she just said no. She was being honest. Well, that was her opinion. This wasn't like a gay person there asking for service, but anyway. But she's able
Indiana,
to under
right?
that law.
Like small town Indiana, right?
Right, it was some like outside of South Bend, I think it was. But I guess, the analysis of the law, I guess we could keep going on, but boy, the reaction to it has just run the gamut of insanity on both sides. And I don't think I've ever seen a thing blow up where I was looking at this side of it and that side of it and going, you guys are all fucking idiots right now. Seriously.
Oh, welcome to my world, Joe.
Wow.
Welcome to my world.
Okay, I understand the notion of, discriminating against people is bad. Okay. In a moral sense, I get what you're saying. We should be more inclusive and tolerant and understanding of people and whatnot. But when you go from there to, let's burn down this lady's pizzeria because her political opinion doesn't agree with me, okay, now you fucked up. No. No. Went too far.
Tolerance, when you're talking about burning down somebody's business because they don't agree with you, you really have no business preaching tolerance anymore.
She'll learn to tolerate me when I burn her shit down. The KKK wants a word with you about their tactics. They want a royalty. They're stealing from them.
There you go.
If that was song lyrics, you'd have to pay them in court, like frickin' Robin Thicke.
Well, no, I heard they're hiring.
Pharrell just did. That's my song 50 years ago. It was called Burn Down Black Churches back then, but you changed the beat a little, and now it's called Let's Burn Down the Gay Haters Pizzeria. What's the difference? Yeah.
Okay, I mean, this, again, I'm looking at this, and I find it normal. I find that it's gone berserk in the era of social media, in the era of the internet. Like, 20 years ago, you can have high school kids form a protest, say, yeah, let's burn down that pizzeria, they're mean, because they saw it on TV, and it'd be like 20 stupid high school kids, and the principal would come out and be like, hey, aren't you 10 of you truant from class? And they'd all run away, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now you put something like that on Facebook or Twitter, and the whole world hears about it.
Every truant high school kid in the whole country is hearing about it. Yeah.
Every dumbass. It's like, weren't you telling me a story about some woman that tweeted something racist?
Yeah, and I wanted to dovetail into this a little. We can get back to the law analysis a little later. That's such a
but I feel like
it's such an exciting thing to discuss. But this thing about the internet, it kind of cuts both ways. Yes, it allows people to mobilize, to share information. During, like, the Arab Spring things in Egypt, people were
Ferguson.
strategizing over Twitter, and during Occupy, these became tools, and they're very useful tools of, coordination and whatnot. But it goes both ways. Now, we have formed Twitter-based and Facebook-based lynch mobs that just wait for somebody to say something even remotely askew that's not per the current wisdom and fucking destroy them. And this one lady, and I said I'd look her name up, and I totally forgot to do that, but look this up. There's a book written about it, So You've Ruined Your Life, I think it was called. This guy wrote a book about it. It was just released. This lady, she was, I think she's some kind of publicist or something like that. She got on a plane going to Africa. Before she got on this plane, she made an off-color tweet that she admits was a bad idea, that was not meant the way it sounded, or at least as badly as it sounded. That she's like, oh, I'm going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white. That's what she said. Is it the most enlightened joke? No. Is it stupid? Yeah. Should she lose her entire professional life for it, and be hounded in the street and chased away from her, lose her boyfriend? Like, she's a pariah, she can't go out in public, she had to hide her face, she can't get a job. Her entire life, over one tweet. She got off the plane, turned on her phone, and we all have this experience now. It starts bringing with all the shit that you missed while you were on the plane. She was getting texts from friends going, are you okay? Oh, it's so horrible, what happened to you? What happened to me? You have no idea. This stuff moves so fast now. Now our whole life's destroyed over one tweet. I think we've just gone a bit too far with this shame and, outrage thing on the internet. We've become bullies.
I'm going to challenge you from a sociological perspective, Joe, on what you just said. Earlier, what you said was social media, it cuts both ways. It allows people to mobilize, to organize, and strategize. Well, if we look at human history, and this will give our listeners a kind of a glimpse into the darkness of the mind of neurotoxin, most organizing, mobilizing, strategizing has kind of been among lynch mobs, hasn't it? I mean, yeah, you hear about the ones that did a good job with it. You hear about Gandhi, and you hear about Martin Luther King, and you hear about the Arab Spring. Those are the ones that go into history because they're the good guys. But the KKK,
I guess
pretty organized and mobilized, weren't they?
For every Gandhi and MLK, there was some dude named Cletus with a pickup truck.
No, there were 10. There were 10.
Who had about
for every Gandhi
20
and MLK.
good old boys ready the minute they said the word, right?
Pretty much. And it gets worse. You ever heard of the Spanish Inquisition?
Yeah.
I mean, and the Salem witch trials. I mean, you're just thinking the last 2 centuries. I'm saying human existence. The lynch mob is what we do. Because as people, when things don't make sense to us, see, we have this thing called conscious thinking or formal reasoning. No animal has it. And because of it, we're the only animal to whom the world can actually not make sense. Animals don't have this problem. They don't get conflicted about things like we have. Okay, here's what I feel like doing, but here's what society tells me is right. Where's the balance? Where's the middle ground? And when we get confused and we get conflicted, our response tends to be, okay, what are other people doing? What's everyone else think?
Right.
And it's all downhill from there. Now, every once in a while, you have an MLK or a Gandhi that actually uses that in a very positive way. Use that to motivate. No. Stop beating people up. What do you mean? No. Did I stutter? Jesus was another one of those, by the way, for you Christian right folks. He never said go lynch a gay person. He wouldn't exactly. I don't think that was. No. Yeah, I don't think that.
They should, like George says, these guys should check in with that Jesus fellow they're always talking about. Because he might not be so supportive, yeah.
Yeah,
what would Jesus do? They don't want to know it so they can do it. They want to know so they can tell other people to do it. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So this lynch mob mentality, you're absolutely right, Joe, spreads very, very quickly over social media.
And I have to bring up an example that it sounded like some of you people, if you read our blog religiously, I know there's like 2 or 3 of you out there.
Like religiously, not like, hey, we could call our blog a religion, and then all these laws would apply to us.
And we have no taxes anymore.
All right. We'll get back to you, listeners, but we got to go look into this. I got to call my tax consultant.
We have to call in a CPA real fast and kind of run some numbers. I posted a while back about Donald Sterling.
Yes.
Same thing happened to him. A Twitter storm basically forced the NBA's hand. I came out in support of the idea that maybe as an owner he isn't kind of worth being in the NBA. Maybe he's not worth their trouble. And I stand by that.
He's a douchebag,
It
regardless.
doesn't mean that I completely agree with what brought him down. This guy was out there for anyone to see, and anyone who knew anything about the sport, the team, any of that, knew he was an asshole and a racist from decades ago. The fact that he was allowed to exist and sit there and then it was the stick in everyone's craw for so many years, and being the shittiest owner in the NBA to boot, let's not forget that. I was making a call on the league, what it should do. Do I necessarily agree with how he was brought down? No, I think it was kind of, it was as random a thing you could pick. I mean, any of the times he was kind of found at fault for racially discriminating against all the tenants in his slumlord apartment buildings, that wasn't enough of a reason. I mean, there was writing on the wall for that guy being racist. It's just that this is kind of part of my point. It actually kind of proves my point. It's when you get all caught up in the moment, as these people do now online, it's as random as any old thing, and it could have been any one thing to set it off. It seems like it's just kind of timing and luck.
Okay, well on that, and that's actually an interesting way to pivot back to the, to the storm going on in the media with the gays versus the religion and the law and all that, the restoration of religious freedom. You were saying earlier that the difference with Indiana from the federal law and some of the other state laws is that it defines any corporation, any partnership. So basically, anything that's publicly held, where it's not like a mom and pop shop where I own a shop, maybe I have 4 or 5 employees. No, this is now big business, and of course the corporations or people, the Citizens United mentality and all that. So, but now what you're talking about, I feel like kind of relates, because obviously Donald Sterling was a very big public figure, and his racism and his outlook and kind of his way of treating people, for that reason, you're saying was different from just some stupid kid making a racist tweet, or even someone
there was a policy, there was a pattern of systemic racism.
I guess you and I have had this argument before. This is nothing new. Is there is kind of a lot of progressive outlooks saying that big business, or business in general, as opposed to like an individual, should not be exempt from anti-discrimination laws, whereas a small mom-and-pop shop or individuals can be. And I want to ask you your thoughts on that. Obviously not just your opinion, but your rationale for that. And most importantly, where do you draw the line? What's the difference between a big business and a mom-and-pop shop? I mean, if they don't have it written in their charter, we're a mom-and-pop shop. We're not a big business.
And if you drew that line right there, then all of the lunch counters that African Americans were sitting in back during the Civil Rights era, all of those places would have been exempt from the Civil Rights Act.
Small business, right.
Because that's the definition of a small business. It's just some cafe in the middle of Birmingham. It's not McDonald's. There's a difference between
But even
those
a McDonald's, what if it's a franchise and it's only got one guy that owns it, and maybe he owns 3 McDonald's? So I guess
that's different,
my question would be to you, this is the thing, I get this a lot from progressives, and they don't really have a concrete definition. I mean, I understand their concerns about discrimination, but what they're saying is, look, business, okay, if you're an individual and you want to discriminate, okay, I can get a lot of progressives to agree, yeah, you're an idiot, but it's your personal right. Okay, you have individual freedom. When it comes to business, when it comes to a large business, small business, and even that's a business and not an individual, then they have basically less rights. But, I mean, I'm not going to do the Mitt Romney thing and say, well, no, corporations are people, my friend, because that's stupid. But there are people in charge of them. And some very large corporations are not public.
Hobby Lobby being one example, yeah.
Another one is Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A is
yes,
another
so
one, right.
Some of these ones that have been in the news, interestingly, they don't fit that definition. They're not publicly held.
Right.
So if I'm a successful business owner and I have a large business, and I want to make discriminatory decisions. Now, by the way, making discriminatory decisions is really stupid if you're a large business owner, let's face it. But if I want to do this, and of course, Chick-fil-A was not refusing to serve anyone. Let's remember that. Hobby Lobby does not refuse to serve anyone. Those conflicts were over completely different things. But if I want to make those kind of decisions, and I'm the individual owner, or my family owns it, it's owned by a family trust, it's not publicly held, then these exemptions do apply to me. So I guess, what would be your ideal, Joe, on this? What would the perfect world, because I know you're a lot more in favor of these laws than I am, how do you see us resolving that?
So I guess this answer to that question is going to sound like a cop-out, and I guess it kind of is.
Nothing new for progressives. Sorry.
Hey, fuck you. I think one of the problems is that everyone in the debate seemingly wants their own personal line where they draw it to be the law of the land. And that's the problem.
Isn't that what we're talking about here, though?
Oh, but that's not how you legislate.
That's what the far right wants too.
That's not how you legislate, though.
How do you legislate, Joe?
Even every far right person is going to draw it in a different place. Because I got news for the far right. The last national poll shows everyone's in favor of gay marriage now. It's not a big deal anymore. And I think part of this flare up is it's kind of the last gasp of a minority now trying to. And when I say minority, it's not just Christians, but there's a lot of Christians that are gay tolerant. It's not a dividing line. That's why I say
far right. That's why I
the evangelical group is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking.
Because,
and them staying relevant is important. That's why they're blowing issues like this up. But, and then that's a horrible way to legislate, too. I think tolerance isn't a bad thing. I think that rolling back protections on people is a bad thing. But I guess, honestly, this whole florist, photographer, cake thing has kind of thrown me for a loop because I don't think it's right to force people necessarily to participate now because let's use the example of a photographer. If the whole idea of the thing that they're at is that they think it's an abomination, do you think that person's gonna take the best pictures? I'm asking that of the wedding participants, and it's I guess what worries me is we've gotten to a point where, and it's just going to be, I think part of what we're at right now as a country and as a culture, it's a tipping point of a cultural morality shift where this thing was thought of as evil not that long ago. Now it's kind of accepted and it's getting more and more accepted, and now gay marriage is starting to gain momentum and it's looking like it's going to be a nationwide thing soon. So you're running up against a lot of the remaining discriminatory shit, and you can't just insist someone change their opinion overnight. They're not going to.
Okay, Joe, I don't disagree with you. I mean, you were talking about cultural shifts and morality, and I agree with you there with a lot of what you said. But I'm talking about anti-discrimination laws, because let's face it, there will be another batch. Just like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, we had, obviously the civil rights movement with ethnic minorities, and another big one at the time was women, which is not something we really kind of give it credit for, but that was another one that was there. And that was another 40 years before that, in the 1920s, with women's suffrage and all that. So that's kind of an ongoing one. So what I'm saying is, and now we have gay marriage, there will be something else. What I'm saying is cultural morality shifts notwithstanding. How do you expect anti-discrimination laws to work, period? How can they be successful? Because it seems to me every time we pass them, then we need a million exemptions to keep civil liberties on board, basically to keep civil liberties intact. And once we have those exemptions, then certain classes start abusing those exemptions, and then it just becomes the clusterfuck that it is now. And honestly, this is nothing compared to the 60s. Still, let's admit that.
No, it's not. It's not. Now we're bitching about who's going to bake a cake. I mean, wow, we've come a long way.
Right.
So I will answer your question with this. I will say this. And I know where you're going to go. Let me preface that answer a little bit. I know where you're going to go. Couldn't a Jewish baker refuse to provide a cake for a Muslim? Couldn't a Muslim baker refuse to bake a cake for a Jewish wedding? Technically, per the Indiana law, all of those are technically possible scenarios now. So to answer your question, though, I think that I'm gonna talk to you progressives a little bit. I mingle with you now more than I used to in the past. I'm going to talk to you as my libertarian self a little bit, just a little bit. I think that this idea that a law is always going to be the fix for everything is not necessarily a good one. And it gets us in these little quandaries, and it ends up making the social change that you're really wanting take longer and be more painful. So I guess that would be my answer. Maybe a law isn't always the best way to go.
Okay, well,
maybe action and education and being a part of the community and using this internet thing to broadcast your message of tolerance and, we're not so bad is a better way to go.
And that goes for you Christians and your morality, too.
Yes.
Just the thought.
Maybe the law isn't the best way, because what is a law really but a giant stick?
Right, and if we're talking about, homosexuality, in my opinion, has
what we're debating is who's holding the stick.
If you want to talk about things like abortion and sexual promiscuity and out-of-wedlock children, maybe there's better ways to educate people against that than laws. Just thought. And drugs also.
And just acting like they're just not gonna fuck, or they're not gonna screw, or they're not gonna get high, or they're not gonna whatever.
Right.
Yeah, maybe the law isn't always the best weapon.
So going back to what I was asking you, and this is always the point that I've made, and I feel like finally with this, progressives are forced to take me seriously, and it makes me happy, is that when it comes to things like discrimination, or really just refusal of service, regardless of what you're driven by, whether you're driven by your religion, whether you're driven by discrimination, whether you're just driven by your personal dislike of someone, there is no way to draw that line. It's arbitrary, it's subjective, and further, remember, this is the law. So just because I refuse service to someone because I'm a bigot, or because of religious intolerance or whatever, doesn't mean you're going to be able to prove that in court. And I've been in a position where I've hired people, and I've seen those laws, and I mean, I'm not that way at all. I absolutely no intolerance for anyone that I'm conscious of, and when I become conscious that I'm intolerant for someone, I work to get rid of that, because I think just bigotry is absolutely just the dumbest thing imaginable. But, that being said, I can tell you those laws are completely unenforceable, and if, let's say, I didn't want to hire someone because they were black, just to use a very obvious example, I could come up with a million reasons for why, and you would never prove that I was driven by racism. So it's basically for progressives, and this is kind of a progressive groupthink, a way for progressives to say, well, we did something. No, you didn't, just like Joe said.
That's kind of a cop-out.
It's more than a cop-out. It actually makes things worse, because it drives bigotry into the closet, where it's so much more difficult to confront. And if you look at sociological studies on racism and bigotry, it's every bit as alive in this country as it was in the 60s.
Totally.
We haven't moved worth shit.
No.
50 years of anti-discrimination laws, and we're every bit as racist as we were then. Only back then, it was people storming around in KKK hoods with their swastikas, and now it's someone making hiring decisions, lending decisions, rent decisions. Which one is more harmful?
It's Chris Rock being pulled over 7 times in 3 months. He started an Instagram, by the way. Every single time he's got a selfie of himself with a cop lights behind him.
And we've had that conversation
a lot
before.
So it manifests in different ways.
But again,
and it's under the surface. As these Ferguson emails showed, shit, it's not that far under the surface.
It's really is. You put your finger in, oh, there it is. Yeah, it's not exactly.
I want to use that point to pivot to another question. I just wanted to ask everyone who got all outraged. And it's like they went to some of the highest levels of the Ferguson government, by the way, of like the district attorney, the court,
there's a whole
the
bunch
judges.
of people that resigned over this, right? The police chief, I think.
If you're getting to the point, progressives, where you send some reporter, or just some reporter thinks they can make a name for herself, just going out and just interviewing every single shop owner you can find until you find someone to make a villain, like this pizza shop owner. I guess my question to you would be, what did you think her opinion was going to be? When you're interviewing people in the middle, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, people forget how fucked up bigoted Indiana has been in its history, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Black people, not always the most welcome folk in Indiana. Let's just put it that way. I guess the thing that concerns me when I see the outrage on the left of this, I get it. I get that you're stomping your foot going, why can't everyone just be tolerant? You know?
Except for you.
I can wish in one hand...
Except for you, because you're not tolerant of people who aren't tolerant.
Well, even leaving that aside, I can wish in one hand right now that I'll have $1 million and then shit in the other hand. Which one do you think will be filled first? I can wish all I want for every single person to just be tolerant of everybody. It's not going to happen. And, like you said, okay, they're not meeting them halfway for one, because you're already saying, you must completely change your opinion to my opinion. Okay, that's how useful is that notion?
How tolerant is that?
And to think that you can go out and then just yell until it happens, it isn't going to work. And you know, I guess this is where like a change in tactics is in order. And I almost think like another activist needs to come along. This is like the Harvey Milk strategy when they weren't even able to have clubs, or they were just beaten and arrested just for being out in public together, out as gay, where that was a thing that you couldn't even do without being beaten or harassed. We're not there anymore. Mostly. I will allow that there's probably places that it's not like the best place to be gay. But, you know, if you're having gay pride parades going down the streets of Birmingham, Alabama, and Little Rock, Arkansas, this is not what it was. You have to agree with me there. Come on. You know, it's not what it was. It isn't. So I think that you need a more nuanced approach here. Just screeching until every single person is 100% gay tolerant, it ain't going to happen. What did you think their opinion was?
Again, going back to what I was saying, and it ties right into what you said here. So first of all, what I'm saying in general, now this is what interests me about the law itself. So basically saying you can't do this thing. You can't discriminate. And like I said, there's no way to objectively define discrimination. I've asked Joe to do it. He's not capable, and Joe's pretty smart. Joe's pretty good at these things. Most progressives I've met would not be able to respond that intelligently to this. So I think we've established, barring something unforeseen, you cannot define discrimination.
Well, it's tough without a scenario.
Right, but but then it's not really a definition if it's scenario specific. It's subjective.
Well, right, yeah, I know
now,
it is.
But the government says with these RFRA laws, okay, but if this violates your religious freedom, then you get an exemption. Now again, remember the first law this was passed against was not a discrimination law, it was a drug law. So, and of course all these Restoration of Freedom Acts, they have a counter exemption where you basically your freedom to religion cannot outweigh someone else's civil rights in some way, which is how they're correcting these state laws now.
Yeah.
So if I say it's my religion says I have to pull out a gun and shoot Joe, no, that I could not claim religious exemption. That's still murder. So you're kind of leaving it to the courts to decide whose civil liberties outweigh whose civil liberties. It's wonderful. That's exactly what I want the government doing. I'm being very sarcastic.
Now, isn't it interesting how they just could have tweaked the drug laws in '93 and avoided all this shit?
Okay, and that's exactly where I'm going with this. The only laws this is ever going to apply to, it's not just going to be anti-discrimination laws. These are all going to be personal liberty laws. That's what drug laws and discrimination laws have in common. I hate to tell you folks this, but discrimination is a personal right. It's stupid, but if I want to wear a swastika, if I want to discriminate, that's a personal liberty. Right?
In America.
As long as I...
Or swastikas in America. I think they're banned in other places.
That does not make it less of a personal liberty. And I've actually written
right.
about how much of a problem this is for a lot of places in Europe. Because it's still your personal expression. Just because you can't limit personal expression because it's stupid. Because then you're going to be limiting probably about 98% of it in the whole world. I mean, idiocy is on every corner. So... what I'm saying is, so you have like a personal freedom to do drugs, which you're exempt from laws against if it's part of your religion, but you can't operate heavy machinery. You see how this just becomes this endless chain. Why don't we just follow the First Amendment and not have laws that restrict personal liberty? Because as soon as you're violating someone else's liberty, you're no longer a personal liberty. There are laws against violence. Nothing in the First Amendment says you can shoot someone or clobber someone. It says you can say bad things about someone, though. That's freedom of expression, right? Whether it's you're discriminating against them based on a group they're part of, or just individually. I mean, isn't that what the First Amendment is?
I guess I think the other side of this is to get back to what I was saying about like the expectation level. You know, aren't you going to run into racists and any gays and all that everywhere? Aren't there enough cake makers in the town? Let me ask you just a logic question. Let's take all the politics out of this shit, all right? Take all the politics out of it. I don't get mean at waiters for one reason. Why? Because they control my food.
Yeah.
They can spit in it, they can shit in it,
and if you saw Joe, you'd understand how important that is, who controls food. Sorry.
Anyways.
See there, that right there is discrimination, right there. No, you could very well say...
I could.
That making a fat
What
joke...
if I start a religion that's all about eating and gorging and being fat? Then anyone who denies me food is infringing on my religious beliefs.
I start a religion that says you have to be healthy, eat well, and exercise, and Joe could never be part of that religion. And then, if I make a fat joke, and Joe says you're discriminating against me for being fat, and I say, no, that's part of my religion. Exactly. Perfect example. This is stupid.
I would ask the question though of any gay couple that wants to force a cake maker to make a cake for their wedding. Do you really want them making the cake for your wedding? Do you know what's in that batter?
Yeah, okay.
Do you want to know what's in that batter? I mean, I guess to the point where you're just going to force someone to do something that goes against everything they believe. It's like, I guess I would just ask, how's that any different? I guess it's just in a moral sense of them expecting you to just be straight. I mean, I don't know. Well, here's the thing, and I'll tell you, I went too far with that one. The difference being, gay people don't choose it. Bigotry is chosen to some extent. You choose it every time you act it out. You can either choose to educate yourself and not be ignorant and be more tolerant, or choose to be bigoted.
It's a point of view as opposed to a natural thing that happens. Okay.
Well, right. But I guess my other question is, why would you want to force that person? I guess I'm just the type of person that, like, you know, if you want to be bigoted, fuck you, fine, I won't patronize your establishment. Why would you want to pay them? Why would you want to give them money? Patronize their business. Give them, you know, anything. Can't you use just tell your friends, avoid this place? Why can't we, you know...
Okay. And our friend Brian Custer, if he were with us, if he were on this show, he would say that if you look at really like the South before the 60s and a lot of other places, what happens is every cake maker in town is bigoted in certain places. And if you are having a homosexual wedding, you can't find someone to bake you a cake. You can't find someone to make you flower arrangements. I don't agree with this argument, but this is what he would say, is this leads to segregation, this leads to ostracism. Which my response would be, okay, well, if you have a big enough community, whether they're black or gay, that's being discriminated against, then it sounds like a great business opportunity. One of you open a bakery and serve that whole unserved market, right? I mean...
And that's what, and quite honestly, when you look back at the Harvey Milk thing, that's exactly what they created in Castro. They created a whole community full of, you know, of photographers, of bakers, of all kinds of walks of life. That's all they did was... you know, cater to each other and provide the services that weren't being provided for them, non-discriminatorily. I guess it almost seems like people are less willing to just do that when it's needed.
Well, I feel like just like the far right is a cornered minority that's now kind of on its last leg in this sense, I feel like a lot of the anti-discrimination lobbies, whether they're ethnic, racial, or they're gay, they've won a lot of the battles. And of course, they still don't have full equality. Of course, there's still bigotry. So now they're grasping at straws, looking for ways to stay funded and stay in power. I mean, the whole Chick-fil-A was a huge victory when they stopped funding because that was the last big funder for a lot of the anti-gay groups. And that's why you had just idiots, just hicks from Alabama defending DOMA because they couldn't afford lawyers. Because that's it. Game over. You're done. They took away your money.
Yeah, I will say that one was one that it seemed like there was a lot less shrieking just about that. You know, and the specific reason why people were boycotting is he wasn't just donating to anti-gay causes, he was donating to, like, conversion. That does infringe. Like, that's a different level of simply not wanting to participate. That's you're actually attacking that group.
And a lot of it was just lack of understanding on his part of what he was doing. But
right. And that was an important educational moment, I think.
But going back to what I'm saying about lunch counters and ostracism, when you're saying, okay, start your own business, whatever. Now, there's actually, for example, in San Diego, here, there's an organization in Hillcrest, surprisingly. I believe it's the LGBT, and they keep adding more letters, Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
And it's businesses, they don't have to actually be LGBT themselves. They're businesses that are LGBT friendly, and they hand these out to people so that, okay, here, this is a business that you can patronize that will not discriminate against you. And businesses want to be part of this because it's a huge community. It's something that's marketable. The difference I find, and again, this is the argument I would make to Brian Custer, but it's a complicated argument, is that homosexuals are not, and I'm only including homosexuals in that. When you get into transgender, that's a whole different story. Really are not necessarily economically discriminated, just because that's not something you can't hide. Okay, if you're a white male,
right,
but you're homosexual, you walk in to get hired for a job, that person that's hiring you does not know that you're homosexual. They're probably not going to ask. If they ask, you can lie. So that's
unless you're walking into a place as a dude making out with your boyfriend. How are they going to know offhandedly? Okay. That's why these specific instances are where all this is coming up, of weddings, all that stuff, which gay marriage being a thing is even really new.
True.
So this is, I think, all I'm saying is it's just, like, everyone's wanting patience. I think both sides need patience to realize we're going through a change in culture, but it's going to be painful.
What I'm saying, okay, but I'm talking about economic discrimination. I'm going somewhere with this. So unless you advertise it, you're going to be able to rent or buy houses the same place where white people do, or where straight people do. I apologize. You're going to be able to work. You're going to be able to borrow money now.
Especially now, we used to be able to be fired, and I think I guess what the people are worried about is that coming back as a thing. I think that it's either not legal anymore anywhere, or there's only a few remaining states.
There's some states that haven't added it, right? But here's the thing, and actually now transgenders are becoming a big thing. But what I'm saying about this is that even someone discovering that you're LGBT and firing you is very different from them refusing to hire you. Because you still have, I'm not going to use the past tense because that's not true, you still have in this country an epidemic of landlords employers and lenders refusing to serve ethnic minorities. If your skin is not white, but Asians are kind of a special case, but when it comes to black or Hispanic, nope. And of course, just because no one has it written, I hate to tell you folks this, just because no one has it written in their HOA charter or in their bank charter that we do not rent or lend or hire colored people, just because they don't have it written, doesn't mean they don't have that policy.
Right, yeah.
Just a thought.
It's just a wink now. Because you can't write it down anymore, but it doesn't mean it's not.
It's still there. And if there's studies on this where you send in, you get 50 people, they're all very similar. Half of them are white, half of them are black, and you send them in to apply for the same job,
same income,
and you see what happens. This hasn't gone anywhere. Your anti-discrimination laws haven't done shit, and that is a big problem. Because then, when I talk about start your own business, start a business organization that caters to that minority, to that unserved market, and that's how you beat the bigotry. Well, you can't because the bank won't lend to you. You can't because you can't rent office space in the right part of the city, right? This is where it becomes institutionalized discrimination. And I think that homosexuals actually have it easier because it's a lot easier to get around that just because it's not written on you, obviously.
For the most part.
Right. Now, what I'm saying, but my argument back would be, okay, now we go even further. Do we really have the free market in things like banking and housing in this country? Please give me the person that says, bring him to my house. I'm going to give him some books to read. Come on. And this is a big problem. I mean, if you look at, Wells Fargo, I believe it was 3 years ago. My point is, these mega banks paying billions of dollars in fines for discriminatory lending practices. They're still in business. They're still receiving trillions of dollars in subsidies.
No bank gets broken by fines anymore. We don't do that anymore in this country.
What's the point of a fine? So, if
Ask Tim Geithner that question.
Right, exactly. Hold on. If I'm getting trillions from the Federal Reserve as a massive Wall Street bank, and I'm engaging in these practices, and the most I'm going to get is a $2 billion fine, where's the disincentive? And of course, it wasn't like...
That's called cost of doing business, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, well, if they can do this for costs of doing business and they're insulated from competition, they're going to keep doing it, right, Jill? I mean, logically speaking,
yes.
And it wasn't like, what they found, the investigation didn't find that they had like a written policy or even an unwritten policy of discrimination. It was just basically you walk into a loan officer's office or a loan broker's office, and he looks at you and he figures, okay, you're black, so your credit's going to suck, so I'm going to offer you a higher interest, higher risk loan. No, folks, that is discrimination. That right there, that's racism. That's far worse than if you were wearing a KKK hood. One, the person walking in, no, okay, this person's a bigot. Don't lend from him, right? Don't borrow from him. Secondly, at least you're honest about it. This is ridiculous. This is not necessarily, I hate people who are that color. It's just more, it's the mistrust, and that's a huge problem. This is the problem, right? It's a much bigger problem than some idiot in Alabama waving a swastika flag, don't you think?
Yeah,
Who is more dangerous, Wells Fargo or some hick?
Well, definitely Wells Fargo. I want to pivot, if I will, to the fact that Mike Pence, up until this last week, entertained notions of running for president.
Oh, no.
Wow. Boy, did he torpedo that, didn't he? Shit.
I don't know why anyone takes that guy seriously. Like I said, I
want to look at this just from a leadership point of view. Boy, did he fuck that up. And I guess, Arkansas got no attention, but they were on their way to passing the exact same law in the exact same week. And the guy in Arkansas, the governor, looked at Mike Pence and went, never mind. I think we'll change this one now, and I'll not sign it first. Because, wow, what a failure of leadership. He goes on TV and goes, no, it's not, you can't do this, you can't do that, it doesn't do this. And then he goes on conservative radio, and he gives an interview to mainstream media, quote unquote, and goes, of course, I think it doesn't need to be fixed, it doesn't need to change, of course I'll change it, to kind of fend off those questions. And then he goes on Fox News, and he's like, no, it's exactly as written, it's not going to be changed. And then he changes it. What an idiot.
There's some real White House material there for you. Can you imagine a guy like that dealing with Iran?
It almost looks like it's hard for him to argue that its point wasn't to discriminate, because when you look at his reaction, when he's talking to his base, he's right on point. Oh, of course it was. Of course that was the point of it. You know, when he's talking to somebody else, no. It's that whole hidden bias, that whole hidden discrimination. It's like, what, so I can't just make law what we already think? Everyone's not going to just support it? Because when you're in the echo chamber, that's what you think is going to happen. Everyone's just going to support it.
Again,
you don't see everyone rising up against it to destroy you over it.
Well, this is the guy, again, who wrote the Pence Amendment, which, for those who don't remember, was a policy writer with one of the budget battles that basically wanted to cut all funding to any kind of really women's reproductive clinic that allowed abortions. And, like, a lot of it wasn't even, like, for abortions. A lot of the funding was for just services, like, with, Planned Parenthood, and, like,
there's a lot of like,
schools, like, sexual education in schools.
Yeah.
That's what it was. There's
a lot of illness prevention that goes on at Planned Parenthood. That's most of what they do. Mammograms and pap smears and things like that. Yeah.
Right. So
it's not just an abortion express lane.
And again, this is the guy who wrote that amendment, and it's just sheer ignorance. No, they do abortions, so we don't need that. And it's just like,
so why is he trying to? And now he's trying to dance around that that's not his opinion. Who would be surprised?
No, Mike, listen. Why don't you
just
put on the hood? Just put on the hood. It's okay. We respect you. You have you're an idiot, but you have your opinions. It's okay. I can't. And again, this is a huge problem for me as a libertarian, as someone that's been involved in the Tea Party movement. And you and I have had this argument many times, where, you know, if it weren't for the libertarians, hate to tell you guys this, the Tea Party wouldn't have gone anywhere. The only reason these far-right assholes even got into Congress is because the libertarians teamed up with them for a while. And now, you asshats are showing your true colors. You have no interest in personal liberty.
Power, they want
you have no interest in constitutionality. You have no interest in limited government. You just want the government to oppress people from your perspective and not from Obama's. You know what? Fuck you.
Yeah, so a related question. Do you think this is the last election, finally, where these evangelical fucks are a chunk that needs to be catered to? You know, because that was always like, that's how Reagan got elected, that's kind of how Bush 1 got elected. They cozied up to the evangelical vote. It just seems like it's a dying minority now.
Well, again,
as a political force.
Going back to what I said, and first of all, they change. Even evangelicals of today are nothing compared to the evangelicals of Reagan's time.
Well, less people affiliate with a church than ever before today than before. That's one thing. And that's how a lot of that evangelical shit got started. It's through the church, through the religious organizations. That's where all the funding comes from, et cetera, et cetera. It's all from,
honestly,
and whatnot.
To be honest with you, to answer that question not directly, my thoughts are, what I'm seeing with a lot of the people that I interact with, who are religious, who are fans of ours, or who are just agree with a lot of libertarian ideals, who are religious, younger people our age, not necessarily the old guys, they may be very religious, but they don't agree with the Mike Pences of the world. They're very tolerant. Now they say, okay, look, we do think homosexuality is a bad thing. We do think it's a sin, whatever. We don't believe in legislating against it. So they understand,
right.
Their perspective is accurately, look, the government is discriminating against evangelicals. It is discriminating against my church, against my religion, by forcing people who are religious to serve, say, homosexual weddings. Or even, let's say, by forcing me to pay for public schools that teach something I disagree with, and I have to homeschool my kids because I don't want them there. A lot of this goes on. This is more of a small-town America thing than it is, say, a big city thing. But it's real, and I agree with them on those points. They're entitled to their opinions. Yeah, they may be a little outdated, maybe. They may be a little obsolete.
Even if they're bigoted, right.
But I wouldn't say they're bigoted. There's all the difference in the world.
Even if you think they are, that's your opinion.
Well, hold on.
Their opinion.
If you think, because of your religion, that homosexuality is wrong and it's unnatural, that does not yet make you a bigot. I'm sorry, but it doesn't. Yeah, maybe a little bit ignorant, but not a bigot. Mm-hmm. You're allowed to think that as long as you're tolerant and you're not discriminating and you think that you should teach people through education. I mean, okay, well, if we want to talk about that, what about abortion? I mean, when Christians say, look, abortion is not a good thing, they're right. It's just that I've never met a woman that wanted to have an abortion. But, if
it's not something I should have willy-nilly anyway, different show. But
okay, well, exactly. But my point is, if they would remember what the church is supposed to do and actually maybe teach people how to have appropriate relationships and meaningful family life, then A, we'd have a lot fewer out-of-wedlock children, and B, we'd have a lot fewer abortions.
What they do doesn't accomplish less abortions, right?
Exactly.
Act like people aren't going to fuck.
Right,
it's not a policy.
Right. Trying to have your morality shoved down other people's throats via the government, first of all, is not what the church in this country has really done for most of its history. Now it's starting to do that, and it shouldn't.
And see, that's what I was afraid of, like I was saying, from the progressive side, the gays are trying to do the same thing. That's what we're saying. Anyways.
Yes.
That's what, to make it clear. Anyway.
So, in my opinion, I don't think evangelicals are going to go away. I do see, thankfully still, evangelicals becoming more libertarian. And what I see really, Mike Pence, if you look at his history further back, he's a neocon. And that's another reason I can't stand this asshole. He's just, brown people in that country are talking shit? Bomb.
Him and Pat Robertson would have been thick as thieves. Yeah, totally.
See, I don't know. No, Pat Robertson is actually way more. If you look at the stuff he actually personally says, and not stuff he's misquoted in the media.
I'm sorry, I was thinking Falwell. But
no. Oh, yeah.
Falwell. No. I was getting them confused.
Right. No. Pat Robertson is actually very much about cultural teaching and not. He's got some bizarre ideas, but he's not about bashing anyone over the head with the government, which is what we're talking about. A lot of these neocon politicians that were less known, Michelle Bachmann's another one. Mm-hmm. They turned Rick Santorum. They turned Tea Party to say, "Oh, look, now we're going to get all this young evangelical and libertarian vote by calling ourselves Tea Party and advocating for the government to beat everyone over the head with, hey, why are you voting me out of office? Because you're a fucking asshole." What we remember, we have this thing called the internet. We can look up all your votes for the last 15 years and, Rick, dude, out.
Yeah.
Secondly, this is not what we're calling for. This is not what you were put in power to do. And I feel like what we're going to have eventually is, these guys get elected in waves of red. You had 2010, you had 2014, and it's precisely because of what you're saying that the Democrats, the left is getting, they've been doing this for a long time, shoving their morality down everyone's throats. You want to see intolerance? Tell a Democrat they're wrong. No offense, but come on now. It's like, how many people have I gone up against trying to tell them that Hillary makes an awful choice for president?
Oh, don't even get me started.
And, you're just afraid of a woman being president. Okay.
Don't even get me started.
Where's my shotgun? Seriously? Your genes and my gene pool, no.
Don't even get me started. That's a whole other show.
But it's the same thing, isn't it? And this is, it really is becoming a feeding frenzy of who can use the government to shove their way down everyone's throat. And you were absolutely right when you said 4 years ago, these Tea Party evangelical psychofucks may be claiming they're for small government, but as soon as they get there,
they just want theological.
Going to use it. Yeah, they're going to use it for their own. But I was right in that they're not going to gain a big enough majority to actually do it, and that hasn't happened.
Thankfully.
Right.
So that's a good discussion of that topic, I think.
Right. So ultimately, I feel like this stalemate. And yes, it kind of manifests in people wanting to burn shit down and whatnot. It's going exactly toward the place I predicted, and that is defederalization in general. Now, the bad news is you're going to have places, again, like we haven't had in 30, 40 years, where bigotry just is ripe and powerful, and it rules that place, and people just aren't welcome. Now you're having somebody offering to move people out of Indiana. That you're on your way there with the fiefdoms, aren't we?
Right.
We really are on our way there, and you're going to have liberal places.
We already have that now, don't we? Yeah.
We kind of do, and you have liberal places where you cannot be an evangelical, because, there's places in San Diego where if you're anti-gay, you're going to have your rocks thrown in your windows. It's reality.
Yeah.
So we are kind of on our way there, but the good news, in my opinion, is that you have less of a centralized authority telling you what to do in either direction. So, there you have it.
Thanks for listening. I'm Joe Ryan.
I'm Neurotoxin.
Thank you for listening to The Edge of Chaos. We can be found on the internet at edgeofchaospodcast.com. That's edgeofchaospodcast.com. Contact the show, edgeofchaospodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at edgeofchaosshow. We can also be found on Facebook at facebook.com/The Edge of Chaos. Neurotoxin's blog can be found at neurotoxins with an S, fyg.blogspot.com. For Neurotoxin, this is Joe Ryan. Thank you for listening to The Edge of Chaos.
understood people judging people for the way they have sex. So some people get angry at homosexuals just for being gay. They get mad at them. Arr! I never really understood that, you know, because they're just having sex with each other. It's like I can understand if gay people were just running out in the streets, just fucking people in the ass willy-nilly, just like a pestilence, like without asking, you know. Like you're at the ATM. Hey, what the fuck? Jesus! God damn it! Some faggot just fucked me right in the ass. Seriously. Fucking right through my pants. He fucking ruined my new pants. It's fucking bullshit. Another one. God damn it. I gotta get the fuck home. This is ridiculous. But they generally don't do that, so I don't know what the fucking problem is. People get mad. They don't want them to don't get married. Well, you don't have to go to the wedding. What the fuck? You don't have to buy him anything? It doesn't matter. So, some people go like, well, then a guy will marry his dog. Good. Fucking, I hope he blows his dog. Who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. It doesn't have any effect on your life. What the fuck do you care? Or people that try to talk like it's a social issue. Like when you see someone stand up in a talk show and say, like, how am I supposed to explain to my child that two men are getting married? I don't know. It's your shitty kid. You fucking tell him. Why is that anyone else's problem? Two guys are in love, but they can't get married because you don't want to talk to your ugly child for fucking 5 minutes? Who fucking cares about your shitty kid? He's probably a faggot anyway. How stupid is that? All right.